Welcome to Breakthrough Burnout, the bilingual podcast that helps you understand burnout better and gives you solutions to heal and live again. My name is Florence Parrow, and I am a sophrology practitioner, coach, author, and burnout expert. In this podcast, on my own or in conversation with other specialists, in French or in English, I'll help you understand the full picture of burnout to better avoid it or recover from it. Breakthrough Burnout, the podcast that helps you understand and heal. Hello. Today I wanted to talk about some aspects of burnout that you maybe did not know about, or that I hear a lot being branded about and not being the truth. So I wanted to really uncover some of those topics and bring you some more information on those subjects. Because a lot of my clients tell me, I had no idea what burnout really was. I had no idea that this could happen, that I had a limit, that I could just sort of crash into my limit. I had no idea it could happen to me. Of course, we always think it's about the others. They also say they could not foresee how violent, how terrible the results were for them before they experienced them. So it's true that these days people talk more and more about burnout. And that's a good thing. When I was in burnout more than 30 years ago, I never got a diagnosis and nobody knew what was happening to me. But nowadays, it's easier to get a proper diagnosis, and a lot of people talk about it, but there's a lot of noise around it as well, and people may use the word in a very light way. I had a little burnout last week. No, you didn't. So minimizing what it actually is and muddying the water a little bit around the subject. And I wanted to go back to a few notions on the subject that I think are really important. And I see so many people not getting it or having the wrong idea about it. The first thing I hear a lot, and it's mainly in the corporate world, is that if you're in burnout, you're weak. That you may even be lazy or lacking motivation. This is so wrong. It's actually the absolute reverse. Because people who go into burnout are actually people who work too much. They give too much. They go beyond their limits. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. They are perfectionists. They want to do their work superbly. There's no middle way for them. And they give it all. Everything they have, they give to doing what they have to do fantastically well. So that's why I often say that burnout is not a weak person problem. It's actually a superhero problem. Because we may think that we have superhero powers and we are able to do it all and be everywhere and be everything for everyone. But that's not the reality. We do have limits and we need to know them, not to crash, not to go into full-blown burnout. What I hear a lot as well is, it's simply a question of will, just go for it, push through. Pushing through is such a major error, because pushing through is going to actually not bring good results, because honestly, when you're super tired, you're not doing a very good job. And if you do it again and again and again and all the time, then it's not interesting for anyone. But you have a limit, we all have. And pushing through only brings you nearer to your limit and to the crash point. So no, it's not a question of will, it's not a question to push and hustle and go for it. Not in a million years, not for anyone. A lot of people also tell me, well, I love what I do, so, I'm not at risk of burnout. But that's actually nearly the reverse. When you love what you're doing, you risk doing too much of it. You don't listen to your limits. You do more and more because you enjoy it, because you love what you're doing. And I'm thinking about entrepreneurs, for instance, starting an amazing project, this fantastic vision, and going for it and being multi-passionate and giving it their all. But they may actually be giving it more than their all, and then there's nothing left. So loving what you do is amazing. And it's actually, yes, going to give you a little bit more oomph when the going gets tough. But it will never, never prevent you from reaching your limit. Quite the reverse. So if you are very passionate about what you're doing, you have to be extra careful about not getting there. I also hear a lot about burnout and depression being the same. They're actually very different. They're nearly opposites in terms of what's happening in the body on some level. It is true that if you are in burnout for more or less a year and a half, something like that, and you haven't had the proper care, you're not recovering properly, then you may go into depression. It's not, it's not going to happen in every single case, fortunately, but it is a possibility. But essentially, burnout and depression are not the same at all, they're opposites. And if you still think they're the same, I urge you to listen again to, at the very least, the very first episode of this podcast, where I give a little bit more insight on this. And we have quite other number of episodes where we go over this, and we will again, because it's such a misconception, such a common misconception that it really needs to be clarified. A lot of people also think that burnout is all about a psychological problem, mental health problem. Well, it is in some ways, yes, a mental health problem, but not entirely, because the biology in burnout is essential. It has everything to do with burnout. Burnout is an exhaustion of everything: body, mind, emotions, your whole being together. And the impact on the adrenals is incredible. So your adrenals are really going to be completely exhausted. So if you deal with burnout with only the psychological aspects, which is important, but the recovery will never be 100%, because there's a whole aspect of the body that has not been dealt with. And it needs to be dealt with as soon as possible, as quickly as possible. Because, well, the brain is in the body, as one of my colleagues say, right? So if your body is exhausted and doesn't function properly, your brain will be affected. So how can you properly work on yourself, go through therapy, go through coaching, if you're not up for it? And I see people years and years after their burnout collapse, still not fully recovered, still not feeling they can work and function properly, because that's the part that they have not done, that they have forgotten. So really, really essential: body, body, body. Nutrition, supplements. It could be, seeing a naturopath, a specialist nutritionist, a doctor working with functional medicine. It could also be traditional Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine. There are many different ways that the body can be approached and helped, but it needs to be done in one way or the other. Another thing I hear a lot about is about menopause. Or rather, I don't hear about it. As in, a lot of women don't realize, well, a lot of people don't realize, full stop, that there may be a link there. We see a lot of women in their 40s and 50s going into burnout quite rapidly. And that's because in burnout, or rather in menopause, in perimenopause, there is a great strain on the adrenals to pick up the slack. So they have to work extra hard. And if you want more information on that, I refer you to episode number 5, where my guest, the homeopath, London homeopath Sarah Davison, explains this in a very, very detailed way and very well. But it is important to be aware of it, and hardly anyone talks about it when, well, just half of the population is going to go through that at one point or another. So, not much. So it's really essential to be aware of it and to be extra careful during those years and with the symptoms that may arise around that time. The last point I wanted to talk about is going back to work too early or not in the right way. Stopping for a month, 2 months, 3 months when in full-blown burnout is not enough. And by returning to work too quickly, you really are taking a big risk. So it is important to stop enough. It is important to get the right care. It's also important to stop for a long enough time. And I know it's not always easy. I know there can be many difficulties around that. It can even be a financial difficulty. It can be feeling like going back to work because you love what you're doing. But it is never a good idea. So taking the time you need to recover, taking the time to go through the right path to recover is essential. So I could go on and on about the misconceptions I hear again and again around burnout, but I wanted to address those points already. Some of them we've developed in other episodes already, others we will come back to. And I will be having guests again from the next coming episodes, so we can go in depth into some of those subjects. But be informed, look for information, listen to the podcast, read the blog, read books, go to the real experts on the subject to understand what you need to do. In doubt, please do not hesitate to email us. We're always very happy to point you in the right direction. In France this term, we are launching a Burnout Academy to train professionals from doctors to HR people to coaches, therapists, etc., social workers, to train those professionals to understand burnout in a very precise, expert way. And we will bring this in English next year, in 2025. So stay tuned. And if you are a professional and this could be of interest to you, please feel free to email us and let us know so that you're among the very first to be informed when we launch it next year. So this is it for today. I will be with you soon again for a new episode of Breakthrough Burnout, the podcast that helps you understand and heal.